My husband, 39 male, knows about my 36 female, 6-month-long affair but hasn't told me. What can I do? So, let's start with some background information. My husband and I met for the first time when I was fresh out of college and living in a new place. He swept me off my feet on our first date, and it was love at first sight. We married 3 years later and now have an 8-year-old daughter. We both have excellent careers, and between caring for our baby and our professional obligations, we are both quite busy. Even when I didn't reciprocate, he always made time for me and treated me like queen. Around the beginning of 2019, I met one of my employees, Nick, who is around my age and has a wife and 3 children of his own. Nick and I began off innocently enough. We would go on business trips together and sit nearby and speak. I eventually sat in his lap, and we had some light caressing, but nothing too intense. I believe he reminded me of when my husband and I were younger, when Nick's eyes shone with a fire that pulled me in. We eventually began to sleep together. I knew it was wrong the whole time, yet I persisted, never once considering the effect it would have on my spouse. This morning began off like any other. My husband gets in the shower before me every day, and I sleep until it's time for me to get in. He indicated last night that he was heading to Costco on his way home from work today, so I took my husband's phone and added a few items to the shopping list. I had my husband's iPhone lock code, so I went into the Notes app to add what I needed, and when I opened it, it took me to a folder with dates on it. The dates began in the first week of March and lasted uninterrupted until the end of the month. I opened one of the dates out of curiosity, and to my surprise, it was a journal. My hubby has never been the sort to jot down his feelings and ideas. It crushed my heart to read the first handful of notes in his journal. My adultery was the focus of the journal, as was my husband's reaction to it. He found my affair around a month after it got physical, based on the dates stated. I hurriedly shut and concealed his phone. When he emerged from the shower, I assisted him in looking for the phone I had hidden. My husband has a work phone and a personal phone, so he was unconcerned about not being able to locate it. He was in a hurry and only had his work phone with him. I took time from work to read each item in the journal. I feel like I'm going to puke because almost every entry for the first 3 months after he discovered my affair was about how he planned on making her fall in love with me again. He talked about taking us on a week-long vacation so I wouldn't see Nick, how he bought my favorite flowers and cooked my favorite dish, but I continued to see Nick. As time passed and I continued to lie to my husband, he began to write in his journal about how his determination was waning, how he was growing despondent, and how he felt so alone and unwanted. After 3 months, the journal entries were entirely about his melancholy and how he sobs whenever he realizes I'm with Nick. He says that he gets visions of Nick's body on top of mine every night before falling asleep, and that the visions make him physically nauseous. He writes in his journal that he does not want our daughter to grow up with divorced parents, like he did. However, I came to a halt in my tracks when I came across a journal post from a month earlier. My husband mentions in the journal that one night when I was with Nick and he was putting our daughter to bed, he was sobbing to himself as usual, but the tears stopped pouring. He claims that his body ceased generating tears as a result of his unsuccessful marriage. He claims that this was the night the Band-Aid fell off completely. He describes how this 6-month procedure felt like a Band-Aid on his soul that was slowly being removed in this blog, and he felt a rush of relief now that the Band-Aid was been removed. It's as though he's finally gotten over me. He had another journal post 2 weeks ago. He tells about how he wants to meet an escort female in this one. He adds that he is unsure how to begin an affair, but that having one with someone other than his wife would be a fascinating experience. My infidelity routine is well known to my hubby. He intends to meet up with this escort while I'm with Nick. At this point, I'm at a loss on what to do. I'm at a complete loss. I'm so ashamed of myself. The whole time, I kept telling myself that no one would be harmed, that the situation would be resolved, and life would return to normal. I had no idea how much agony and suffering I had caused my spouse. I've cheated on him several times, and he has suffered as a result. What options do I have now? I will never cheat on my spouse again, although it is probably too late for me to realize this. What should I do now? What options do I have? I understand that many of you will say hurtful things about me, and that's okay, but please help me restore the marriage that I damaged. Now, let's go for story 2. My fiancé cheated on me after 4 years together. Found out his secret he's been dealing with for years. So after 4 years of dating, my fiancé, 21 male, and I, 22F, have recently moved in together. We got engaged a few months ago, and everything was perfect between us, except for a few little squabbles, and things were looking up. That is, until I discovered the truth. For a few months, I'd had the uneasy sense that he's concealing something, but I've always dismissed it as insecurity. I'll confess that when we first moved in together, this sensation overcame me, and I chose to glance at his phone while he was walking our dogs. I know it was a huge blunder, but what I discovered made me sick to my stomach. I discovered emails in which he had logged onto many dating sites in search of trans women. I also discovered an Instagram account he created to communicate with a trans woman he met in college and claimed wasn't somebody who would leave him alone. Finally, pornographic searches aimed towards trans women. However, I came to a halt in my tracks when I came across a journal post from a month earlier. My husband mentions in the journal that one night when I was with Nick and he was putting our daughter to bed, he was sobbing to himself as usual, but the tears stopped pouring. He claims that his body ceased generating tears as a result of his unsuccessful marriage. He claims that this was the night the Band-Aid fell off completely. He describes how this 6-month procedure felt like a Band-Aid on his soul that was slowly being removed in this blog, and he felt a rush of relief now that the Band-Aid was been removed. It's as though he's finally gotten over me. Of course, I confronted him, and he told me that he can't get the concept of being with a trans woman out of his brain, and that he has been approached by ladies from his school, but he has no desire and doesn't understand why he continues returning. He also blamed pornography, claiming that it is the source of his impulses. I feel ill and like I've been lied to, and I'm not sure how to handle this knowledge. I agreed that we could work on things since he was so distraught, but I can't stop thinking about what I witnessed and am unsure how to go. Any suggestions would be much appreciated. Now, look at some opinions. I believe something that would bother me is that he misled you for years, since there are males that fetishize trans women. Did he genuinely have emotions for me? I'd ask if I were you. Was he using me to fool others into thinking he was in a committed relationship? Was he thinking about me or a trans lady during intimacy? The majority of individuals believe it is unethical. Don't give him false optimism that your relationship will succeed because he begins to weep. You're still young, so you have time to go on. To be honest, I had the same feelings at first and questioned our whole relationship. My mother married a guy who turned out to be a scam artist, and no one knew he was gay because he was embarrassed, so my mind naturally came to that conclusion. But I don't think our relationship was staged in any manner. I believe there are always indications, and he's never showed me anything other than passionate love, which just adds to the pain. Because I know he cares about me. Don't be the wife who saw the signs and ignored them for years while he had on the side, only to have him play victim, because he was too ashamed to be who he really is because of his shame and self-hatred. And now you have 2.5 kids and have to figure out how to go on as a single mom and co-parent with your now ex and his new partner. You are deserving of better.